তরল চুলার আগুনে ফুটাতে থাকুন।
তাই কাটুন, ঢালুন আর নিশ্চিন্তে খেয়ে ফেলুন। প্রাণ UHT মিল্ক, নেভার মিস লাইফ।
Possibly wondering what is going on with the layouts, what are all these settings, and how do I optimize this program to run the best that it can for recording or streaming or whichever purpose you plan on using it for, or maybe you are somewhat used to using OBS and you just want to know what some other features are, or maybe some better practices for setting up scenes and recording and streaming as well. If so, stay tuned, because this video is a ultimate beginner's guide and we're going to cover pretty much everything in this video. What's going on, guys? Chad here from How To Tech, the channel dedicated to helping you take your tech to the next level. And this is the ultimate OBS beginner's guide. This is great if you are just getting started using the program, or if you've been using it for a little while and want to know what certain settings are or how to better use the program. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and play a small little clip that will show you the different timestamps for the information that we cover in certain sections, and feel free to check the description out as well for the timestamps to jump around to whatever parts of the videos that this video that you find interesting for yourself. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it.
All right, guys, so getting started with basic OBS information, and that is, what version and iteration of OBS we're using. So we're using vanilla OBS version 25.0.8. There are obviously other version numbers of vanilla OBS, and there's also different iterations such as Streamlabs OBS and Stream Elements OBS. Pretty much they're fairly similar, and the settings that we're going to be covering today are pretty much identical throughout those. They might just look slightly different, or maybe referenced in a slightly different way, but for the most part, everything that you learn here should apply and cross over into those programs, which is great. So another thing is, what is OBS used for? It's used for recording and streaming, and yeah, that's pretty much the basic information for OBS. Let's go ahead and move into some of the other categories. One of the main things that you need to be familiar with inside of OBS is the layout of what all is going on here. So this, for example, is your current scene that is selected, and we have scenes over here down in the bottom left hand corner, and scenes are similar to like pages on a website, and inside of those pages or scenes we need content, and that's where sources come in. So sources kind of, those could be images, webcams, display captures, video game captures, and stuff like that. And then our next part is our audio mixer, and this is where all the audio gets mixed down, and there's some advanced settings that we'll look at in a little bit inside of there. Scene transitions, this just lets us select which transition we want to use, and even lets us use our own. Check out the card on the screen to watch our video on 100 free OBS transitions that you guys can get. Costs no money whatsoever and is free to download. Super awesome that we have that. And then the last is our controls section. This allows us to, start streams and end them, start recordings and end them, use a replay buffer. And you might not see that right away, but we'll check out that setting in a little bit and show you where to enable that. Get to studio mode and then into our settings, and then also exit the program. All right, so before we get into all of the different setting menus that we're going to go through and pick apart piece by piece, I want to mention profiles. Profiles are used to save settings inside of the settings menu. This is extremely useful if you need different settings for recording or streaming, or if you plan on using multiple accounts and you don't want to have to go back in and adjust, to have the settings for one Twitch account, a second Twitch account, a third Twitch account, a YouTube account, all those kind of things, or if you plan on streaming or recording in different bit rates and file sizes and things like that, and this saves you tons of time. All you would do is click on profile, create new profiles, and then like I said, you can rename them, and whatever settings you make for that profile is specific to that one, and then you can create a new profile and then do other settings inside of those. Like I said, extremely useful if you plan on doing multiple accounts or just need a use case of where you don't want to have to mess with those settings over and over again. So without further ado, let's jump into the settings. To do so, we can click on the settings right here in the bottom right hand corner, or we can go to file and then settings. Either one should work for you. And we're going to be looking at our general settings first. So most of these settings are self-explanatory. If you would prefer to change like the language or the theme, you can do so here, and then automatically check for updates and stuff and open up stats and things like that. But most of these things people aren't really going to need, and they're, like I said, they're pretty self-explanatory, and you can go through here and see if any of these are applicable to anything that you want to use. For the sake of this tutorial, we're not going to go through every single one of these settings because these are pretty much, like I said, for this the third time, pretty much self-explanatory. So let's go ahead and move on to the video settings. Kind of skipping over the general settings, this right here is where I tend to start whenever I use OBS on a computer for the first time. The first thing you want to mess with is the base canvas resolution. This should be set to the resolution of the native resolution that is of your monitor. So if you have a 1080p monitor, set it to 1080p. If you got a 1440p, set it to 1440p. 4K, set it to 4K. This is just dictating or trying to pull off of what your monitor is set to. The next setting, which is the output scaled resolution, this should be set to the resolution that you either wish to record or stream at. So for example, if I wanted to stream in 720p or record in 720p, I would just click on the drop down button here, and then I would change this to 1280 by 720. If I wanted to stay at 1080p, I would just leave this at 1080p, and that's going to go ahead and let us record or stream at 1080p. The downscale filter is the method that OBS uses to convert the output resolution. So for instance, if we change this from, the monitor is set to 1080p and we wanted to change it to 720p, we can set that here. I would do some research if you guys are interested in trying to find out which downscale filter is best for you, because certain ones are better for static images and stuff on screen, say for example like a PowerPoint or a presentation, and then other ones are really good for live action moving stuff, and other ones are better for like gaming and things like that. So find out which downscale filter works best for you. And the next part, in the last part inside the video settings, is FPS values. I tend to leave it on common FPS values, and if you are streaming or recording, I like 30 or 60. If you're doing any kind of cinematic work and you need these other resolutions in here, they are already pretty much in here. I don't know of any other resolutions or frame rate people might be looking to record or stream at. Maybe if you want to go really high frame rate over 60, you could do that in here with the integer FPS value. But for everybody else, I would suggest 30 or 60, depending on which you plan on recording or streaming at. The next thing to look at is audio. When it comes to the general settings, I normally suggest leaving everything alone if you're not familiar with sample rate and the different types of audio channels. However, if you are experiencing some issues with the audio, the sample rate may be causing that. So look into what your devices like natively support for sample rate, but pretty much everything by default in Windows, not everything, but most everything defaults to 44.1 kilohertz. And if you have issues with it, like I said, go ahead and look at that. Channels, if you're not certain,